Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. It's Novak Djokovic versus Carlos Alcaraz for the 2025 US Open semi-finals. Cannot wait to get into this one. It's a repeat of the 2025 Australian Open quarterfinal, where of course Novak Djokovic came back from a set down to win in 4 sets in very impressive fashion. So can he do it again in the second hardcourt slam of the year, or will Alcaraz adapt and will he come out on top and get revenge? Before you do get into it though, of course, do remember to hit that like button, do subscribe if you're new, and do your rating or review if you're listening on a podcast platform. Shout out to our members as well. The head-to-head is 5-3 in favor of Novak Djokovic, and what an impressive head-to-head he has. He's won the last 2 matches between the two at the Australian Open and then in Paris. Of course, the Olympic final, very tight final, 7-6, 7-6. And Alcaraz has wins over Novak at Wimbledon 2024 final and the 2023 final, in addition to the Madrid Masters semi-final in 2022. So Novak has won the 2 hard court matches they've had in Cincinnati. What a tight match that was. Of course, Carlos Alcaraz had chances to win that in 2023, winning that 5-7, 7-6, 7-6. And then, of course, at the Australian Open this year, 4-6, 6-4, 6-3, 6-4. Not a huge amount in those matches, but Novak just finding a way to get it done. And I think showing his experience, and also, we forget that, yes, he's incredible on grass, but I would argue that he's the best hard court player ever, and he knows how to navigate his way around hard courts, especially fast hard courts, and he's just so adaptable on this surface. And because the surface is so true, you just feel that he's so confident in the game plan he wants to employ, and also his general, I think, shot quality, it really does increase on hard court. For Alcaraz, a lot of his game is based on variety. So he actually, in my opinion, plays better on clay or grass because you don't get those true bounces and you can use the conditions a bit more. And it is a little bit more unique where the slice will work more, for example, on grass. Higher topspin ground strokes work better on clay. On hard court, it can be a little bit samey at times, and you have to be a bit more tactical in the way that you play. And Novak is the king at that. What we're going to do is very briefly now talk about their route to the semi-finals. Then I'm going to touch upon a tennis insight. Thank you to TennisViz for providing that. Then ultimately I'll give you guys my prediction. So Djokovic has looked pretty good, dropping 3 sets en route to the semi-finals. Beat Leonard Tien in straight sets, Sveda in 4, Norrie in 4, Struff in straight sets, and then Taylor Fritz in 4 as well. Alcaraz has also been pretty good, and I think he's had a slightly easier route, I'd say. And neither player coming up against a number of seeds. I'm looking at Djokovic, he came up against 1 seed in Fritz, Alcaraz 2 in Darderi and Lehechka, and Alcaraz hasn't dropped a single set this whole tournament. He's looked very good. Beat Opelka, Bellucci, Darderi, Rinderknecht and Lehechka. And what of course has been impressive, and it's not a surprise, the fact that his first serve points 1 percentage has been hovering around 85%, which is very impressive, his first strike tennis. For Novak, he has been, he's been pretty good, not as potent on the first serve or off the first serve, but he's been protecting his second serve well, and of course been breaking as always, because I say as always, as he's the best returner of all time, no doubt. On hard court, he is the best returner as well of all time. At the moment though, I'm not sure if he's the best returner on hard court currently, with Yannick and Carlos around, I have to be honest. And we looked at the quarterfinal metric of return quality, and Novak doesn't top the stats. That was at the quarterfinal stage. He didn't top the stats over the 52-week average. It was actually Yannick, and Carlos was close to the front as well. Novak was actually in the middle of the 8 quarterfinalists, which is interesting to see, but age could be a factor for sure, no doubt, and I think that probably has affected his return somewhat. So let's look at this Tennis Insight, bring it up. So this is all centered around their forehands, and it's an interesting one, and the reason why is because this is using only hard court data, and it's 2025 data only. So Djokovic played 9 matches on hard court this year, Carlos 20. And if we're talking about shot quality just on the forehand wing, Lorenzo Musetti tops the leaderboard, interestingly, on hard court for 2025 only as the most potent forehand on hard court, which is crazy. Like, would you have expected that? I wouldn't have. And I think he's got a very good forehand. I just didn't think he'd be number 1. But I mean, he's had a pretty good year at times, but I would have thought maybe on clay. But on hard court, it just shows what a weapon, I guess, his forehand is, and he's backing that up. He plays, of course, Jannik Sinner in a quarterfinal shortly. And then Novak is number 2, he's 2nd, and Alcaraz is 3rd. This is on the forehand leaderboard. So, yeah, I mean, if we look at this, so the middle line would be if both players had the same score. And then, as you can see, in terms of forehand quality, we're talking about 52-week averages over just the hard court season throughout the year. So, as I said, 9 matches for Djokovic, Carlos 20. Forehand quality, Djokovic just pips Alcaraz, 8.5 compared to 8.4. But interestingly, I mean, I wouldn't say Alcaraz is necessarily pipping Djokovic here. He just uses his forehand. What's the forehand usage metric? 56% compared to 53% for Novak. Then forehands in, again, Novak on top, 88% of forehands in compared to 83% compared to Alcaraz. And then average forehand winners, this is where Alcaraz does top the metric at 8.2 winners per match, 5.1 only for Novak. And obviously, that does come down to style of play. Yes, Novak plays more aggressively nowadays, but he still, in my opinion, doesn't play as aggressively as Carlos. So he's probably not going to hit as many winners, but he'll make less errors. So it's all relative, I would say. So how does this one play out? So in the Australian Open matchup, Djokovic did a couple of things very well. Number 1, he hit some really big slice kick, some very big slice serves out wide, especially on the second serve. Alcaraz did not adjust his return position, and they were playing at night, which I think is a big advantage for Novak because he likes to play flat. And obviously when the conditions are cooler, right, like they are in the night, then that suits Novak even more. And that's why they used to talk a lot about Novak playing Rafa at Roland Garros, and at night he'd have a better chance, but in the day it would be very, very tough for him, for example. And the same can be said on any slam when he's playing a top player, depending on who the player is, of course. For Carlos, obviously, if it's in the day, he plays a lot more spin than Novak, so the ball's going to kick up more, it's going to be more lively, he's going to get more out of the surface, and the conditions if they play in the day. I would imagine they most likely will play in the day because they played a day before Sinner and, Sinner/Musetti, who will play Felix Auger-Aliassime in the other semi-final, and they're playing at the moment. So I would imagine they'll try and give them more time to rest because the guys, Novak and Carlos, have an extra day, so they'll probably be up next. So if it's in the day, that's a big positive, I think, for Carlos. And I think he has the advantage, despite not beating Novak on an outdoor hard court. If it's in the night, I actually think Novak has the advantage. And as I mentioned before, what he utilised really well and he'll be able to do in colder conditions, and I'm sure he will do even in the day, is hitting that slice serve into the forehand of Carlos, especially from the Jew side. And he got a lot of free points from it, a lot of free points. Carlos did not adjust to that serve on the first, especially on that second serve as well, which, to be honest, he should be trying to attack and being pretty potent on the front foot, really pushing Novak. And they were both trying to do so on second serve returns. If you watch the match back, both were standing inside the baseline for the second serve returns. I would argue that Novak was returning better, especially off the first serve. And Carlos, I think part of that is down to the fact that Novak was hitting his spots better on first serve. Carlos was not hitting his spots particularly well. He was serving relatively big and making some first serves, but a lot of his first serves were into the hitting zone of Novak, and you cannot afford to do that against someone in Novak who's the best returner of all time. So a few return winners here or there where Carlos was literally just rooted to the spot because the ball flew past him as soon as he served. So he needs to be more tactical with his serving. I think he's improved his spot serving and also his general serving as a whole, technique-wise, has always worked on that. And I think, that's got to be a must if he wants to win this match, Carlos, is the spot serving and just being more intelligent with his serve. It's all well and good just serving out wide, but if you're serving out wide straight into the strike zone of your opponent, then, it's not going to be a very effective serve. So I think he needs to work on that. His kick serve in the daytime is going to be more potent, of course, on the second serve than in the night. And in the past, we've seen Novak struggle with Carlos's kick serve, especially on clay or in daytime conditions. But that has been less of an issue in the last few meetings because Novak has adjusted to that. For Carlos, he was getting out here at times, especially in the forehand to forehand exchanges, and I guess the metrics show that could be another difficult matchup for Carlos. He was trying to hit with a lot of whippy spin in nighttime conditions rather than flattening out the forehand more. And I wonder whether, even if they play in the daytime, whether he'll try and just mix it up a bit more, because at times he's a little bit samey on the backhand, which is very rare to say for Carlos because normally every board is different. But against Novak, I think where he rushes you, makes you feel uncomfortable, I think Carlos was maybe reversing to type or trying to do too much on the forehand. So I think he needs to be quite intelligent with how he utilizes that. And also Novak was being very intelligent going in behind Carlos a lot when they were in the exchanges and just making sure that he was off balance. And that's a good point to then talk about the first set of the Australian Open semi-final where Carlos was getting Novak off balance a lot with really good pace and depth through the court with angles, and the drop shot worked really effectively against Novak at the Australian Open as well. Of course, he had the strapping on his leg. He is struggling with a little bit of a back niggle, if I'm not mistaken. So if I was Carlos, I would utilize that drop shot as he normally does. But I would also be a bit more tactful in terms of serving and returning dynamic, making sure I'm making a lot of balls down the middle, or he is. And I think he should also be, as I said, spot serving better. And then, look, if he's doing that in the rallies, it then comes down to his variety. And is he going to be able to maximize that to the best of his ability on a hard court? I'm not so sure. Is Novak going to be feeling something physically? He talked about it at Wimbledon, the fact that when he played Sinner, he lost in straight sets and said, he just felt like physically he wasn't able to keep up. And I wonder if he'll have a same feeling when he plays Carlos at the US Open, or whether it'll be a completely different kettle of fish, as Carlos, I would argue, his worst surface is hard court. In terms of prediction, look, it's tough to say how this one plays out because a lot of it comes down to how Novak is feeling with the niggle that he had before. I'm going to pick Carlos Alcaraz in 4 sets to get slight revenge, start closing the gap in the head-to-head. I just feel like he's playing so well, hasn't dropped a set. Novak, I think he's also playing well, but you just wonder, with everything else going on, could he yet again be a thorn in Carlos Alcaraz's side, given it's hard court? And the answer is yes. But I just think Carlos is going to be more fresh. He hasn't played as many matches. He doesn't have a niggle. Form-wise, he's in really good form. Obviously came off that Cincinnati win as well. So I'm going to pick Carlos in 4 sets. Let me know in the comment section below what you think and why. Thanks very much, guys. Stay safe and well. We'll see you next video.